and getting it out. Got one. Look at that, right off the bat. Oh, they love this pattern. Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. Now, if you saw my video on Euro nymphing for smallmouth and the challenges I faced in trying to get those flies to turn over against the wind because they had a lot of drag and not enough weight. So one of the flies I was using was my twitch fly, which works extremely well for smallmouth, especially in chartreuse. So we're going to do a chartreuse switch fly, but I'm going to do it with Euro nymphing in mind, not the way I normally tie the fly. So this is kind of a Euro nymph variation of the twitch fly done in chartreuse. I'll say before I get into it, you'll see that I'm using these Eagle Claw jig hooks. Now, the reason for that is they're a 90-degree bend. And I would like to use proper Euro nymph hooks, but I've had trouble finding 90-degree bends in a size that's big enough. Because this is a 2/0 jig hook. And you need something big for bass. You don't want dainty hooks for bass. And in general, I mean, you can catch fish on dainty hooks, but life is a little easier if you use a hook with a decent gape. This one has a relatively short shank, so it's a good combination of gape width, relatively short shank, compact enough so the body of the switch fly is not too big. You know, it keeps the size down. So let's get looking at the rest of the materials. You see on the hook here, I've got some lead wire and I've got a tungsten bead. So we need those to get this fly down. And you see there's a lot of lead on here. I haven't glued it in place yet because I wanted you to see the length of this. Give you an idea. It's almost half the shank covered in lead. And the idea is just to give this thing enough weight that it'll turn over. My thread is this Vivas 10/0 in chartreuse. Everything is chartreuse on this thing. I'm using chartreuse marabou for the tail. I've got chartreuse chenille for the body. And my legs are going to be made out of chartreuse silicone rubber legs. And these work great. Okay, let's get started by gluing the lead into the into the bead. And what you want to do is make sure it goes all the way into the bead. There we go, like that. And you can see I'm using a 90-degree jig hook, and the advantage of that is once I've jammed that lead into the bead, it prevents the bead from going around. If you use a 60-degree bend, the bead can slide up, and then you can put thread in front of the bead, blah, 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 blah. So this makes it a little bit simpler. I've just jammed that lead right up into the bead, and now it's jammed up against the 90-degree bend, and it's not going to move. Okay, let's put on our thread. And I'll make some wide turns here so I can cover the lead without digging into the lead. Okay, now we're going to put on a marabou tail. And the tail is roughly the length of the shank of the hook, the straight part. Now just keep that tail on top of the hook. Don't let it slide around. Okay, just double check to make sure it stayed on top. And if you think it's moved a little bit, just tweak it. There we go. Now for chenille. And what we always do is take a little bit of this off for tying in point. Work your thread back and bring it forward. Okay, now let's wind our chenille. And as I say, take your time to make sure that tail doesn't twist when you're putting it on. Make sure those chenille wraps are close together. We don't want gaps. Bring it up to the lead. Maybe one turn onto the lead. There we go. We'll stop there. Now what we're going to do is just put one wrap of thread in here. And then just move that chenille out of the way. Now we're going to put in our rubber legs. We don't want these rubber legs too long, especially at the back. If you get rubber legs that are too long, they tend to flow backwards, and they can flatten, the current can flatten them against the body. So if you keep them, you know, between a half an inch and 3/4 of an inch, they'll remain stiffer and vibrate more. So we'll put a couple of turns in there. And the other thing is you don't want your rear legs longer than the shank of the hook, because they'll snag around the gape of the hook, and that gets to be a nuisance after a while. Now the other side. And we've got one that's a little long, so we'll just trim it. That one is a little long too. There we go. Now we'll get our CA glue again. We're going to put a little drop right there. This helps with durability. I'm a big user of silicone, CA glue when tying these sorts of flies. It really helps with the durability. And we just come in front of the legs. Now what we're going to do at this stage is just put a little drop of CA glue just behind the bead. So I'll just wrap my chenille into that. We'll put one right up against the bead, nice and snug. And then we'll tie it off. Lastly, we'll whip finish. Just watch out for your rubber legs. And take the last moment just to trim off any legs that appear to be a little on the long side. Okay, there we go. There's our Euro style twitch fly. It's it's about 2 inches long, a little over. So it's fairly big for a Euro nymph, but you notice the body is not particularly thick. I used a fine chenille. I didn't use a really bulky chenille for this one, because if you use a really bulky chenille, you're adding drag and you're adding to the problem. So this fly, being relatively slick yet heavily weighted, is going to sink. And it's going to be also easy to cast because it doesn't hang up in the wind like I had with my regular twitch flies. So there's my Euro nymph twitch fly. You could use it on a fly line as well. You don't have to keep this just for Euro nymphing. You could use a standard fly line and fish it. And with the weight, it'll go right to the bottom, and the jig hook keeps it from snagging up. You know, you can't do much better than that. So give it a try. The Euro nymph twitch fly. Cheers. Got him. Get him out here. Oh.